Resources chapter.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight, Tuesday, August 6th, we're here for the public hearing of the Parsons Field Comprehensive Plan. What we're going to do tonight is I'm just going to go over a few slides real quick. If for those of you that were at the rollout, you saw these first four slides, but just want to bring everyone up to date a little bit, just keep everyone aware of everything we've done. And then we'll open the floor to questions. So, starting off, again, the team members, I think you folks recognize most of these names. In particular, we want to call out the contribution of Reagan Young, who's the Special Projects and Communication Manager for Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission. Without her help, we could have not gotten this far in so little time. Even though we've been working on it for quite a while, it's just the amount of work accomplished is truly amazing. I hope everyone can look at the document and appreciate everything that's gone into that. And again, everyone contributed, but Reagan, we thank her very, very much for her incredible contribution, for all the maps, graphics, so on and so forth. So what is a comp plan? Well, it's simple. It's not how I call it simple. It's a document that defines the goals, the objectives, principles, guidelines, policies, standards. There's more coming. Devices and the instruments for the immediate and long-range protection, enhancement, and growth and development of the town. Basically, soup to nuts on everything we'd like to see for the town. It's recommendations on what we like to see for growth and change in the town, and certain protections and other things like that. So obviously it should reflect how the town citizens would like to see us managed. It becomes the guide for the select board and any other governing body to set policy, create, and manage opportunities within the town. And by opportunities, we'll talk a little bit about that later, but you'll see one of the things to our whole plan is we talk about 5-year plans. We'll talk about that in a little bit. It cannot contradict any state, county, or federal law. It does not establish new or change existing laws or ordinances. And that's a critical thing to understand. This does not change any of the current regulations or laws, anything like that. It is a plan. It's where we'd like to see the town move, how we'd like to see the town move. The state requires all towns to have a comprehensive plan and review and update at least every 10 years. If we don't have an updated plan, and if it is not aligned to our ordinances, our ordinances can be challenged in court of law and overturned. There's no basis for our ordinances if they're not also reflected in the comp plan. Ideally, the comp plan should come first before the ordinances, but we have instances where we have ordinances, but it's not supported by the comp plan. And we've had a few projects get through over the years that was one of the things that their attorneys pointed to, that it wasn't in our comp plan, so there's not much we could do. So again, two key things. This does not change law. It does not set up new ordinances. And it is important that we do have this matching our ordinances. Otherwise, we have no standing. We could possibly have no standing in a court. Likewise, although the state hasn't done this very often, there's other sources of funding that could disappear. Things for roads and so on and so forth. The state has never enforced that aspect, but you never know. 4 years, 8 years from now, they may start enforcing some of these things, and we could find ourselves in a lot of trouble. The plan, there's two parts. There's the inventory, which is all the data and local knowledge to describe conditions, and an implementation part. And what's key in there is goal, policies, and strategies. And that's exactly what you have there: a goal, the policies, and the strategy to accomplish those things. There's also a future land use plan. And again, that details a little bit more of how we'd like to manage our future, how we'd like to manage the future management of our land. Goes a little more detail than some of the goals, policies, and strategies. Progress to date, I think you've all heard of this many times, but we completed a survey, a townwide survey on 7/6/2019. Then COVID came along and disrupted the whole effort. We made a presentation with the data on 8/24/19. And we have completed recently the full comprehensive plan inventory draft. There's nine goals, I think 36 policies and 136 strategies. That's a huge amount of effort and work laid out there. The document, the comprehensive plan and the appendix comes out to about 148 pages altogether. That includes maps and so on and so forth. It's a very, very large and comprehensive document. Please take some time and read it. Just going back to the surveys real quick, we did 1,600 surveys and we had 107 returned. So the next steps are the revised plan based on community feedback, like we're having now. Vote to accept the final plan and hopefully at the September 7th town meeting, and then execute the implementation plan. Again, that bottom one sounds very simple, 3 little words, but there's a ton of work involved there. And we're going to need the help of the community, maybe some volunteers for some things, perhaps some time just to come to meetings and help with some ideas. But some community involvement is going to be important to do this, because we don't have a huge town government, and we can't just delegate everything to everybody. There's not enough people to delegate things to. So please keep that in mind as you look forward this, as you look at this, and how can you find some time to help us implement this and realize our vision for the town. And getting down to the bottom, this is the contents of the whole plan. As I mentioned, the main plan itself is about 115 pages and 23. Whoops, sorry about that, folks. I just love these things that run in the background. Yes, I got stuff that's outdated too. Thank you very much. Again, I won't read all that, but again, you can see what it covers. Basically, soup to nuts. Residential development, transportation, existing land use, fiscal analysis, you name it. And as noted, the current inventory draft, the large document, that's 7.29.24. That's available and has been available on the town website. The comprehensive plan update, the appendix, that's also available on the website, as well as the townwide survey. And the appendix details bridge deficiencies and fish passage barriers. So it's very specific to a couple of key things, but it was added as an appendix. So having said all that, that's the presentation. And so we're hoping that, again, everyone's had an opportunity to review the document, because that's not what we're here to do. It's too large. We believe that the comp plan updates align with the will of the town and what the people want. We want to protect our area from unwanted growth, extensive harvesting and overuse of natural resources. And there's also many, many other challenges, but those are kind of 2 top things that seem to bubble up a lot. Plan calls for creation and updates to long-term plans. I mentioned that a little earlier about, you'll see us talk about a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. These are critical to identify, this type of planning is critical to identify a roadmap to get you where you want to go. And also in that roadmap, you identify budget concerns that are going to pop up. So that way you can start setting money aside for this 2, 3, 5 years before you need it. Or if you're aware of a program, a federal, state, or county program that pops up a year or 2 before we need it, before we were really planning on it, a project, we'll have it in our head that, we're going to need this. So what kind of lead time do we need to get funds? So that's what it's all about. Most of these plans have what's called a 5-year horizon, basically a view of 5 years, and they need to be updated. But you'll see many, many times we ask for either the creation of or an update of current plans, only because it's just it has gotten so complicated to manage a town. We're growing, and it's just the best way to do it, really. Every successful business has a plan. Don't believe what you read on a lot of the internet on stuff. No, good businesses have good plans, and you can adjust them. We're not saying they're inflexible, but you got to have a path in order to get to the conclusion that you want. So that's it. Got any questions?
The word compliance, how does that affect the plan? Let's say there's something done outright once the plan's accepted. Is there any way to do enforcement and compliance? I mean, it's a real, let's say it's a severe break from the plan. What can we do?
What we are requesting in here is that we actually do have a committee that monitors the work done by the town to the plan. You know, are we following it? Are we on time with things? That kind of thing. Beyond enforcement, I mean, something, legal action or something like that, I don't believe there's anything we can do to force the town or force someone to follow a plan. It does not have any legal authority. It's truly just a plan. But would everyone agree, I think, on that?
I read someplace in here, a lot of this is up to the code enforcement officer to do a lot of that. Now, what happens if he finds an inconsistency? That gets back to Cliff's question about enforcement, I guess. By the way, if anybody doesn't know, you can download the whole plan on a PDF just by going to the town website, which is what I did.
So the state requires the ordinance document to follow the comprehensive plan. So if those two, so say an ordinance is proposed that goes directly against the comprehensive plan, that ordinance could be challenged in court and would be found to be not in compliance with the town's comprehensive plan. So at that point, it's one of two things. You change the ordinance or you change the comprehensive plan. And so this is a living, breathing document that can be changed. We could approve it now and we could change it again next year. And so one of those two things would need to happen in that instance. From an enforcement standpoint, as we said, we're going to have a committee that's going to be sort of monitoring the goals that are outlined and some of these, actions that need to be taken. But there is no sort of enforcement if they don't happen.
So I got a question for you. Has the planning committee considered going through the existing ordinances and putting them in different categories and extend to look at the comprehensive plan to see if there's any?
That's not part of the comprehensive planning committee's job.
But they have.
But they have.
But we have. Yeah, so we've started to look at some things that need to be updated. We've talked about, again, as chair of the planning board, I can speak on this. So we've talked about pulling some of the items out of the ordinance document and creating its own, specifically shoreland, pulling that out to kind of create or remove some of the ambiguity between the shoreland and the regular, because as I'm sure you're aware, that's kind of tough when you get in there. And so kind of separating those two documents will make it a lot easier. But there are a lot of new things that need to be considered by the planning board, specifically calling out solar, wind, things like that are not talked about in our ordinance document that need, that we called out as they need to be addressed. Yeah. So there's several pieces in there that the planning board will have to. And so once this document is approved, that is sort of gets the ball rolling for the planning board and says, all right, these are all the places that those things need to be looked at and changed. And then they'll be able to move forward in getting those ordinance updates done.
I guess my concern is that, it was mentioned a couple of times that our ordinances or a comprehensive plan have to line up with the ordinances, and yet it's not the job of the comprehensive planning committee to look at all the existing ordinances, and that seems a little ambiguous if we're trying to pull together a plan that is fairly close or lines up and we don't have any ambiguity for the state.
I'm going to say that I think this comprehensive plan does pull together a lot of the ordinances and works them into what we've come up with, goals, policies, and strategies, and each chapter. And more than the CEO, you know, the select board, the planning board are listed also as those who might be responsible.
Well, I think what Cliff is driving at, correct me if I'm wrong, Cliff, about 20 years ago when we did a deep dive into this, the question came up, if there's any inconsistency between the big issue with zoning, if there's any inconsistency between the zoning and the requirements of the plan, that was ripe for a lawsuit. So the big issue was, at that time, changing the zoning to be consistent with the plan so you could come up with that match. And repeatedly, people voted it down.
Voted what down?
Voted everything down. We never approved a plan.
Oh, the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, and also
Back in 1990, you mean?
early 2000s.
Okay, yep.
And then the recommended zoning changes, that's where the real tough part was.
I do understand that committees work really hard, and I do have faith that the committee feels that there isn't any ambiguity in existing ordinances compared to what the plan's effort is trying to do. But I always wonder whether part of the effort needs to also be the ordinances on one hand, the comprehensive plan on the other hand. As you go to create it, you're checking, you know, is there any major ambiguity here where we could see it? That's, you know.
Well, I think that also is the responsibility of everybody in town. Because when we do these ordinances, they all got to be voted on.
Yeah, you're right. 100%.
So everybody ought to be looking to see if you can find any way that we didn't do it well.
But yeah, that will be the job of the planning board, is to have the two documents in hand and go through, fine tooth comb, and make the changes that agree with the plan. And so what's important for this vote is that the comprehensive plan aligns with what you see as current and future state for Parsonsfield. And then, once that is agreed to by the town in the vote, then it's upon the planning board to say, okay, this is the vision for the town. Our ordinances need to reflect that. Zoning needs to reflect that, you know, where we can put certain buildings, where we can put, you know, everything that's in that ordinance document can be updated.
And we look to include things that haven't been included in the old plan, to pull them in just to make sure that, you know, now and in the future that the plan would be covered some of them. But like we said, it doesn't, you know, can be worked on and should be updated. I mean, our last plan was in 1990, you know, so that's way too long and needs to be updated on a more regular basis.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Will a simple yay or nay vote at the September 7th town meeting accept this, or?
Yeah, it will be a warrant article. It will be a warrant article at the annual town meeting. You know, shall the town vote to accept?
Yep.
Yep. And since we've already had 2 hearings on it, it won't be hopefully up for a huge discussion because it's already been discussed, yeah. But that's how it will be voted on. In case anyone doesn't know, it'll be on the annual town meeting warrant.
But yes, it will be a simple yay or nay.
Yeah.
Okay, by whoever's there.
Correct.
And after that vote of yay, hopefully, when is it implemented, or, I know there's a lot of people that have to get involved in.
I would imagine if once it's passed, the first thing we probably do is try to form the committee that's gonna monitor the implementation, and then, you know, have that as sort of the nexus for for driving it to the, to the rest of the town. I mean, I know all the folks here will, take their pieces in March and all that, but from, implementation, the plan aspect, getting that central committee to say, okay, so what should we do? Oh, let's sit down, and talk to the select board and see, how would you like us? Where can we step in? What can we do? We can't tackle it all at once. We know that, so, we have to chop it up into something reasonable. So that would be my opinion anyway on the next step, once it's approved.
Yeah, yay vote would essentially be the green light for everybody to start working on all the different strategies that are outlined in the plan. Yep.
Then everyone will vote it down a year later because we can't do this. Ah! No. Just kidding, everybody. It is doable.
John?
Yeah, I'm trying to anticipate future problems. And on page 96, a couple of red flags came up. One was the differential growth cap that different towns have. I've read some stuff about that that's been rather controversial here in Maine. And then the other one is when you what is called the tax increment financing, or TIF, for the development in the Keyser Falls area, for example. If the revenues don't increase because of that increased growth, then that's going to be a tax burden on everybody else. And the little bit of research I did, some towns had that problem where they gave tax breaks for a certain section of the town to be developed, and then the projected revenues because of development didn't come through. And then the town was hit with the tax burden that they didn't think they were.
And
So that's something where we have to be cautious about.
Right, and that may be an ordinance that's written that never gets passed for that reason. That reason, this is not saying that we will do that, but these are merely suggestions to.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to anticipate. That's why I said there were just two red flags that came up when I read that section.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Going once? Going twice? 3 times? I nominate we close the meeting then, and thank you for those that were silently listening, and thank you for those of you that attended. Some of you, it looks like I've seen you before. Interesting.
Thank you, folks, for doing the work. I know one kind of work goes involved.
Did any comments come on to?
I didn't see any.
Okay,
I was
okay.
watching
Oh,
it.
you were watching it,
Yeah.
good, okay. I was gonna say, I'll take a look right now.
It must be a perfect document then, absolutely perfect.
And then, Tom, all you gotta do is on the other laptop, just click the red stop button down the bottom.
We did, at the initial informational hearing, get comments from a few people that were addressed in terms of